guys, it's Izzy here, and today we're going to be looking at all of the books that I read and completed in the month of April. Let's get into it. The book that I most recently finished is The Lost Ticket by Freya Sampson. This is a romance book, and I ended up loving this book, but it's not a new favorite. That means it was a 4-star. Let's start by talking about the characters. I love the old people characters in this, like Frank and Peggy, but I struggled with our other characters. Our main romance is between Libby and Dylan. They were fine, but there were some instances where I really didn't like them, where they did things that annoyed me. It's just, I hate when characters make things hard on themselves. I'm like, you did not have to do that. And then our side characters, we have Clara, Libby's mother, Libby's ex-boyfriend, who are one-note villains. I hate that. I absolutely hate. You see it a lot in the thriller genre and in the romance genre, where you will have these villains but no backstory on them. It's just like, they are a terrible person, but you don't understand why they're like that. Especially Clara, I think there could have been so many layers to her story, and she would have been a very fun character to develop as a writer, but the author just left them one-dimensional, and I really didn't like that. The atmosphere is great for slice of life London. You can tell that the author really knows what she's speaking about, but I don't think an American audience will really find an appeal there because obviously they're American and not from the UK. It was still interesting to see what London is like for people who live there. The writing was also very heavy. It was definitely overwritten, and the parts that were about like those one-dimensional characters, I found myself skimming their chapters. I was like, I do not care. Definitely the writing, I felt like the writer had to get to a certain page number, and the plot also leans into the writing with, I feel like so many of the plot points in the third act were just there to cause drama and were very unnecessary, and felt like I was watching a show for teenagers with a lot of drama. Just so unnecessary, and especially the plot line with Simon, who is Libby's ex-boyfriend. It went on for far too long and was just extremely unnecessary. I get they were like, probably, oh, this will develop her character, but no, I think that her character could have developed in a lot easier of a way than just having that annoying, crazy ex-boyfriend. Now we have Naomi by Junjichiro Tanizaki. This is a Japanese classic that was first published in a magazine back in 1924. So this book is it just turned 100 years old. I think it was first translated English in the 1980s. This is a great character work. I loved exploring the dynamics of this relationship. We have a age gap relationship that is very inappropriate. The girl Naomi is about 15 and 16 when she gets involved with the main character, Junji, who is like 32, 33, in his early to mid 30s. He is self-aware that he's a creep, and I really thought that was an interesting thing to explore, a character self-aware that this relationship isn't right, but he's in it anyway. Seeing how Naomi, because those years where she's in this relationship with him are crucial to your development as a person. So seeing how she grows as a person, being in this strange relationship with this man, really did enjoy exploring their relationship and the dynamics of their relationship, but I never felt an emotional connection to these characters. As for atmosphere, this takes place in Japan in the early to mid 1920s, a place in that time period that I know nothing about. I didn't really know what was happening in Japan in this time. So it was very informative on showing what life is like. We have a lot of westernization of Western influence coming to Japan, and that's a big theme in this story, is that Naomi they are like, oh, her name can sound like a Western name, and they say a lot that she looks very Western, is showing how Japanese citizens at this time were really gripping onto American and British culture for the movies and fashion and magazines, that a lot of Western culture was going on to Japan at this time. The writing started out very good and accessible, which I didn't expect because this is a classic, and sometimes classics can be hard to read because people talk different than they did 100 years ago. And also, this is a piece of translated fiction, so you never know if you're going to be getting a good translation or not. But this one, so easy to read. There was no issue with the accessibility with it. About a quarter of the way into the novel, pacing did start to lose consistency, and there were some parts where I was just like, oh my gosh, can we get out of this scene already? And then some bits felt really rushed, so there wasn't really a consistency to the pacing. This isn't a plot-heavy novel. We are looking at those character dynamics and relationships, and then the themes, as I told y'all, about the Western influence, the modernization of Japan. We have our main character, Junji, who he comes from a rich farming family, but he's leaving that life behind to move city life in Tokyo, going to work in an office. That's something you see all over the world in this time period of people leaving behind the farm. Also, we have the important theme of how do you become the person that you are? Is it your breeding? That's what they say. They say the word breeding. So is it how you are raised, just you're born that way? And I thought those were really interesting themes to discuss as well. I do think this one would be a great book club or buddy read pick. Now we have Henry V by Shakespeare. This is a play that I did follow along with the audiobook. I do like to go that route with Shakespeare and just some plays in general. I think it's just a very immersive reading experience, and this one did have like sound effects of swords and the gravel that the horses were walking on and all of that. So it was really cool audiobook reading experience for me. I didn't really have a favorite character in this. I do think Henry himself had the best lines in the book, and that's something with Shakespeare. His dialogue is fantastic. Not to skip over the atmosphere, this was very info dumpy. I'm somebody who I know a ton about this time period. I don't want to say I know everything, but it's my favorite time period, the War of the Roses era. This is slightly before that, but there was so much info dumping, and so if you're not familiar with that time period, then you won't have this issue with this book. As I said, the writing, I really love Shakespeare's dialogue. I think it's what he does best. This one, this was very military heavy rather than political heavy. I prefer politics for medieval settings rather than being out on the battlefield, and that's why I didn't really vibe with this one, as it just was out there in France, Agincourt, all of that. I'm not here for a fight. Another romance. I binge read this one in like 2 days. This is The Party Crasher by Sophie Kinsella. This girl's like childhood home is being sold, and she like sneaks in. It's so outrageous. So our main character, Effie, so annoying. Again, this is such a big issue in romance books. These people are so immature. I'm like, if she was just grown up about it and been like, yeah, I'm gonna go into the house and pick up my things, like, we wouldn't have this book. But no, she's like, I have to go on this secret mission and sneak in the bushes and all of that of her own childhood home that her father still owns. What? And I hate when everything is going wrong in the character's life. There were no positives in her life whatsoever. She lost her job, she lost her boyfriend, her parents got divorced, their son, her childhood home. No, there has to be some positives in her life. Everything is awful to her, and I'm like, that's not realistic at all. I hated it. The atmosphere was fine. It was actually really easy to picture this house that was her childhood home that is being sold and all of that. It was easy to picture this Victorian home, and I usually do like settings that are like in a British estate. I just only sit in there very like picturesque and fun. The writing, it was fine. No complaints there. And then the plot, as I said, it's just extremely outrageous, and I think it would make a good and funny movie, but in book form, no, it was just so out there, so dramatic, and it wasn't for me. This book is one that's really like fun to review, and that is The Everlasting by Katie Simpson Smith. This is a historical fiction, but we have like 4 plot lines. We have one in 2015, then we have one that is in the 1500s following, okay, the 2015 was like a biologist, and then in the 1500s we're following a Medici princess, and then we have the 800s following a monk, and then we have one in the like 100s that is following a Christian martyr who is a child. I did not find myself connecting with the majority of these characters. So the Christian martyr, she was my favorite. I love seeing the world through the eyes of a child in a book that is for adults. There's just so much wonder. You're experiencing everything for the first time, and there's so much left for the imagination. I love reading about characters like that. The monk, I didn't feel anything for. And then the Medici princess, believe it or not, I did not like her. She was my least favorite character, just very stuck up and poorly written in my opinion. The biologist, he was fine. No strong feelings there. The atmosphere though was my favorite part. This is set in Rome and it's spanning, yeah, from like 100 all the way to 2015. So like 2,000 years almost. Oh my gosh, it was just so amazing, showcasing all the history that is in Italy. And I thought the author did a great job that in shorter than 400 pages was able to show off how Italy evolved throughout all those years. I did find the dialogue lazy in this. The prose was heavy and overbearing, but there were some moments where I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good, I had to take a picture of the page to remember it forever. So the writing was such a mixed bag. I don't know how the author did that, but they did. And then the plot. I love history and how everything is connected. And this is something that I think about literally all the time, of how much history is in Italy. Going back to like the Neolithic time periods, we have tombs of hunter-gatherers who just have these like miraculous graves of just all the stuff that was put into the grave and all the work. And then we go to like the Etruscans, to Rome. By Rome, I mean ancient Rome. And then we have the Renaissance and the World Wars. There's so much history there. And this author did a great job at showcasing that. Then we have Alice in Wonderland. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. So again, another classic because that is what I really focused on reading in April. The characters were so strange, but I thought they were cute. And I think this was overall just a really cute book. And it is for children ages 9 to 12 is what Amazon said. I do think that's perfect. So if you have a child in your life, definitely recommend picking up Alice in Wonderland. Setting was obviously very whimsical and fairy tale-esque, and I really did enjoy that. And then the writing, it was beautifully written. But the plot, I'm just like, what is happening? This is the OG fever dream book. So I can definitely see the influence this book had on those weird girl books you see today, like Bunny by Mona Awad, which is very obviously inspired by Alice in Wonderland. But you can definitely see the influence this book has had on literature in the last 150 years. Then we have a carryover from March, and that is Winter of the World by Ken Follett. This is a historical fiction following normal people from before World War II to just about after it. And this was so informative. So my favorite characters were Lloyd and Daisy, and Carla kind of slipped up there towards the end to being one of my favorites. I love seeing how all these families are interconnected and how it just goes through generations. I really enjoyed that aspect. And the atmosphere, this is set all over Europe and then some parts in America, but definitely very European. I feel like a lot of the American plot lines got kind of pushed aside in this one, so they are definitely more prevalent in the first book. But I do think in the third book it's going to be Cold War, which is basically Russia versus USA. I feel like we're going to get a lot more America in that book. The writing, it was great. This is when a writer can write a dense book, but it's not overbearing, because I read so many books where there are paragraphs as long as pages. Okay, this is 910 pages, and none of these paragraphs are taking up a whole page. If you write a paragraph that takes up the whole page, that's instantly going to make me not want to pick up your book. I'm sorry, but it's true. Some writers just can write these big books and make it accessible, make it easy to read, and I appreciate that so much. As for plot, as I keep saying, this was so informative. I learned so much about what life was like in a lot of countries pre-World War II, especially in Nazi Germany. Oh my gosh. And then I didn't know anything about the Spanish Civil War. I learned a ton about that. I knew nothing. And this just gave me such ideas. Like, I know all this stuff, and when I'm watching or reading other World War II stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, so that's what that character means when she talks about that. And it just gave such world building, I guess, for me in my journey of learning more about history, particularly the World Wars. And we have my favorite book of the month and so far this year, and that is Dead Mountain, The Untold True Story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident by Donnie Eichner. This is a nonfiction. My friend Sarah got me this book, and oh my gosh, I've already told her, like, thank you, because This, I've been needing this. It was a 4.75. I truly just could not give it that 5-star, mainly because I don't think the author did a great job at developing all the people who were involved in this incident. He did a great job on about 3 of them, but there were, I think, 9 hikers, and I wish that there would have been more development to those. So definitely if I reread this, I would take notes, and I think with notes, this could have been a full 5-star reading experience. This is taking place in the Ural Mountains in the USSR in the 1950s. I doubt any of y'all know anybody who went to the Ural Mountains in the 1950s. So this author really had to do a great job at building this world for you, showing what the Soviet Union was like back then, and it really just humanized what people in the USSR were like and what the hikers in this incident were like, because I'm like, yeah, that happened, but I never really thought of the people themselves. And I thought the author did a great job of just bringing this story to life. And the writing was great. It was gripping. It read like fiction, and I love when nonfiction can do that, just making this feel like a real story. He presented great ideas, and his main theory of what happened, I had never thought of that before, and I read this at the start of the month, and I am thinking of this pretty much every single day. So I love that this was a new theory that I had never heard about presented on the table for what happened in the Dyatlov Pass incident. I have a short story collection, and that is Of This New World by Allegra Hyde. I do love Allegra Hyde's writing, and the writing was great in here, but a lot of these stories I just didn't care what was happening. It did get really good towards the end, like the last couple stories were really good, and I do think a lot of them could be developed into full novels, which one of these was. I did a whole review on my channel on Allegra Hyde's book Eleutheria, and there is the short story that inspired that novel, so I would love to see her make some of these into novels of their own. And we are on the last book, and that is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. Ben got me this book, so thank you, Ben. For characters, I honestly don't remember much about them, but this is very much transgender representation, so if that's something you're interested in reading about, here you go. The atmosphere, this is a dystopian atmosphere on the East Coast of the United States, so super interesting, but I do think there needed to be more world building. The writing, I just remember being very grotesque and being very vulgar, which I usually don't have an issue with cussing and sex or whatever in books, but in this, it was over the top where I'm like, no, kind of uncomfortable. And that's, as I said, it's very hard for a book to make me uncomfortable. TV and all can do it all the time, but with books, that's extremely hard to do. And I get this as horror, and I've read other horror, but this one, it just hit differently. Then the plot, again, I just think everything else needed to be built better for me to enjoy the plot more. Those are all of the books that I read in April. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it all the way through, leave any kind of rain emoji in the comments below. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.